greatest country in the world. Welcome to our special. Who is Zohran Mamdani? We can end the special here. Here's a tweet he recently sent out. That's quoting Karl Marx. From each, according to his ability, to each, according to his needs. But, whatever. Can you believe that the people of New York City voted for a Muslim communist from Uganda? Yes, I can. I can in fact believe that. It was foreigners, two groups of people who voted for Zohran. Foreigners and young women, young white women. That's it. Those two voting blocks. What bizarre bedfellows. And you add to that the fact that normal people in New York City have left. They all went to Florida and the Carolinas. People don't understand this, and people need to get this. New York City is not the place that you remember it to be. It's totally different now. It's totally different. William Wolfe said it. He said, New York City is now a third world metropolis wearing the Big Apple as a skin suit. Americans did not elect Mamdani. Foreigners did. The white population of New York City in 1910 was 98%. That's who built New York. The white population of New York City in 1950 was 90%. In 1980, it dropped down to 52%. And today, the white population of New York City is 32%. The rest are foreigners. And then of the 32%, nearly all those are transplant progressives. Young progressives, recently out of college, moving to the big city, bringing their communist ideology, their communist religion with them. It is a religion. We'll get to that more later in the show. It's a religion for those who hate Christianity and are trying to fill a God-sized hole in their heart. Again, more on that later. But look at the voting blocks for Zohran. 82% of gays voted for the Muslim. The Muslim who just recently took a picture with the lawmaker in Uganda who passed a kill the gays bill, where if you're gay, they kill you. In Uganda, which Zohran, by the way, is still a dual citizen of. He took a picture with the lawmaker who wrote the bill, just like I think 2 weeks ago, or 2 weeks before the election. And 82% of gays voted for Zohran. Look at it, people break down by religion. People whose religion is other, like not Christian or Jewish, other, 70% voted for Zohran, and 75% of people whose religion is none. And then look at the breakdown of women or age and gender. Young women. I told you, I didn't make that up when I said it a second ago. 81% of young women voted for Zohran. I'll never forget when I first voted. We'll talk to some guests later about why that is. And I want to talk about one aspect of it here. But I'll never forget when I first heard of Zohran, he was calling for government-owned grocery stores. And I laughed it off. And it wasn't long after that, like a couple minutes actually, and I was like, wait a second. That might work. With an electorate of foreigners and young women, that'll probably do it. Fast and free, that's brilliant. Fast and free is a brilliant slogan. Who doesn't want that? Same thing with hope and change. Sounds great. What kind of change are you talking about? Doesn't matter. You can put out whatever you want on it. Fast and free, whatever. What's fast and free? I don't know, everything. Now, he did a good job. You got to give it to Zohran for identifying the affordability crisis in New York City. But no one ever asked, what are the reasons why New York City is so unaffordable, right? They never addressed that. It's like, fast and free. And then I saw Jewish people endorsing Zohran. Like, oh yeah, like we are living in bizarro world. Did you ever think that 24 years after 9/11, remember all the outrage in 2010 about the Ground Zero Mosque? Which is a mosque it was a mosque they wanted to build a couple blocks away from where the World Trade Centers were. That was in 2010. Sarah Palin was all about that. And now here we are, not long after that. And we have the guy who's going to be the mayor. When he's running for office, he's running ads in Arabic. And he's palling around with the unindicted co-conspirator of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. Like that to me, 24 years ago, if you told me that was going to happen in the year 2025, I think that would have been pretty hard to believe. All right, we got some guests coming up, but I want to make this point right here. First, why we should all care no matter where we are. I don't want the devil to get a foothold anywhere in my country. I very much understand. I totally get the appeal of letting the people of New York City get what they voted for good and hard. But it is not good to let these people control the biggest city in America. There's no reason to believe that the people will learn their lesson and in 4 years vote for a Rudy again. No, it's not. It won't happen. This is not 1990 New York City. The demographics aren't there. Demographics is destiny. It's not there. 62% of kids in New York City have someone in the household who's foreign born. That's it. There is no Rudy revival bounce back in New York City's future. And we saw what 4 years of Biden did to this country and how much damage that can cause and how difficult it is to reverse. I mean, all the work that President Trump has done to deport as many illegal aliens as he can, we're now back to like last year's levels still. Even if New York City learns its lesson, it could still take decades, at best decades, to fix it and get us back to just where we are today. So I don't want to give up on any place in my country. But here's the main point I want to get in the next 4 minutes. How could people vote for Zohran? Foreigners, I get the foreigners, right? They grew up they don't have a Christian background. They don't have a Christian culture. They don't have an American culture. They come here from Sri Lanka or Pakistan. And of course, they want to make this place more like Pakistan and vote for the Uganda guy. Like, I get that. But what about the white women who grew up here? What is this about? What's happening here? Luxury beliefs. Luxury beliefs. Oh, one more data point I forgot to do. Transplants. Did I mention this? I don't think I did. People who are born and raised in New York, native New Yorkers, only 38% voted for Zohran, the foreigner. But people who have lived here less than 10 years, who have lived in New York less than 10 years, 82%. 82% of those people voted for Zohran. Progressives from all around the country, little communists moving to New York City, voted for the communists. Okay, luxury beliefs. I saw leading up to the election a lot of these pictures of these young girls who would post selfies of themselves with their Mamdani stickers. And you look at these young women and you're like, what are you doing? What is going on? And there's like a whole thing, hot girls from Mamdani, right? So you think, what is this woman's deal? Again, I understand the Muslim guy, but why would the white woman who's going to get punched and raped on the subway and have no police to call, why would she vote for Zohran? And it's because of luxury beliefs. The great Rob Henderson came up with this term, luxury beliefs. And his claim is that luxury beliefs have replaced luxury goods. So back in the day, the way to differentiate yourself from other people was to show off your luxury goods. Here are my nice clothes, here's my expensive diamonds, or even the activities, right? I play golf and I go beagling, right? And this is ways to show that you're wealthier than other people. We see it in nature too. The African gazelle, right? You've seen every nature documentary will have these gazelles like jump super high, like, oh, that's crazy. So scientists believe the reason they do that is to send a message to their predators, to the lion. And when they jump super high like that for no reason, there's no reason to jump high, right? You want to jump far, but they jump high. Why do they do it? It's called stotting. The idea is they're so healthy. Hey, lion, look how healthy I am. Look how high I can jump. No use coming after me. I'm so fit, so strong, so fast, so healthy, don't even bother. Look at all this energy I can extend, I can waste by jumping high in the air. I can do that because I'm so strong. And the lion looks at that and says, I'm not going to go after that. I'm going to go after a less healthy option to go attack. We see that in nature. Humans, we do the same thing. For a long time, people would spend money on things with no utility. Take an expensive purse. Okay? If your goal is to transport items from A to B, a grocery bag does the exact same task. Just put it in a plastic grocery bag and you're good. But rich people don't do that. They would look for ways to show how much better they are than other people, so they'd buy the $10,000 Louis Vuitton purse. And it sends this message, the more money I can waste, the more money I can spend on this, signals that I have plenty of money to spare. Now the problem is, or I should say the next step is, everyone can buy luxury goods today because everyone has credit cards. So once luxury goods become accessible to everybody, it loses its status symbol. If everyone has a Louis Vuitton purse, then what's the point? Back in the day, like back in the medieval times, spices were a status symbol, right? Oh, you have cinnamon, unbelievable. Well, now everyone can buy spices. So like that doesn't do it. The nicest forks and knives that kings would use weren't made of gold, they were made of aluminum. Oh my goodness, look at your aluminum. Aluminum forks, it's unbelievable. Now no one's showing off their aluminum foil collection, right? Because it's more prevalent, so who cares? And that's true with almost every luxury good today. So, how today can you show that you're of a higher class? And that's by showing your luxury belief, by believing crazy things. And the more insane a thing you can believe, the greater your social status. I believe that a little girl can become a little boy. That's crazy. But you show that, you say that to show other people how great you are. Look at this luxury belief I have. I believe in defunding the police. Why do people believe that? Why do people say that? It's the same as why they used to buy the $10,000 purse, because they can and not be affected by it. At least not at first, right? Because the rich person lives in a nice neighborhood, or the very rich person can buy private security, so they're not affected, but they can believe it. And they can say it. And people in their groups like, oh, wow, that's amazing. People elites use garbled language. They use this jargon. We now know these terms, but terms like cisgender, cultural appropriation, heteronormativity, these terms, when they were first said, were like, what? Like no one had any idea what they were talking about. That was the equivalent of wearing a tuxedo 100 years ago. It shows how smart you are. It shows your social status. It shows your education levels. It's like a gazelle expending energy to jump really high, or a rich person beagling. It says, I have the time and the means to acquire esoteric ideas, and look at this jargon that I know that you don't. I am great. This is why celebrities have so many transgender kids. There's celebrities that have like 3 trans kids. That's statistically impossible. But they parade them around like a status symbol. It's a new type of luxury good. It's a luxury belief. Now, the problem with luxury beliefs is they hurt people. When a rich person says defund the police, it hurts low-income people, which is why the lowest income people, the real working class, voted for Cuomo. It was the foreigners and the rich white people who voted for Zohran. Someone wrote on Twitter, they said a lot of people left and right don't get that voting hard left is as much a class signifier as where you went to college or skiing in the Alps. Voting for Zohran for rich young white people, especially girls, women, it's a luxury good. They can afford it, but they think they can. And if things get too bad, they can always move away. Let the plebes deal with it. Now, if I may, and I'll end here and we'll get to our wonderful guests. The one good thing that could come out of a Zohran win, the one bit of light at the end of this tunnel, is that it makes it a little more likely, and this is my own pipe dream, I shouldn't even say this, because it's so unlikely, but the thought of it makes me so happy I have to say it. The Zohran win, a Zohran win means that once New York City just gets torn to the ground, it makes it a little more likely that from its ashes, we could one day have a mayor, Donald Trump. No, hear me out. Donald Trump, he leaves the White House and he's done, and he decides to go back to his hometown and save the Big Apple. How Jeffersonian of him to retire back to his hometown. It's the only light I can see here. Then and only then will it all be worth it. Coming next, we'll talk to one of these young women in New York City. And then we'll talk with someone who knows the Muslim roots of Zohran. And we'll wrap up with our Politics by Faith segment. All coming up right here on The First TV.
I am in favor of defunding the police. I think that what we need to do is not chip away $1 million or $5 million. I think in this first year, we need to take $1 billion out of that budget.
Are prisons obsolete?
I think that, frankly, what purpose do they serve? I think we have to ask ourselves that.
We'll have to go beyond the market. We can establish community land trusts to gradually buy up housing on the private market and convert it to community ownership.
We have to continue to elect more socialists, and we have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism. There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it is the end goal of ceasing the means of production.
सवाल पूछना चाहता हूँ। तुमने कभी किसी को वोट किया?
But if you want to pursue your promise to create the single largest deportation force in American history, or your promise to persecute and punish your political enemies, then you will have to get through me to do that here in New York City.
Pretty amazing. I want to go right to Caroline Downey. She's the columnist and host of Locked In for the National Review. Caroline, how are you? She lives in New York as well. Caroline, we got a lot to talk about, but just big picture, how did this happen? How does New York City have a Muslim communist from Uganda as the mayor now?
Well, it wasn't because there was a working class revival or a blue collar, movement that really got Mamdani to power. He's not the champion of that group of people as much as he'd like to say that he is. He won because, as my friend at Breitbart, John Carney, wrote, of the Park Slope populists, the types of wannabe elites, college graduates in a boatload of debt. They're the ones who thought that Mamdani was their ticket to clout and to success and to finally be relevant. They thought they'd be a lot more successful than their parents were at this time. It's those types of people that voted in Mamdani. It's not at all this bedrock of the working class. It's actually those who have plenty of credentials on their resume, but they thought that Mamdani would be their ticket to success.
That's a great point. I heard it's not the working class that voted for Mamdani, it's the student debt class that voted. So let's talk about that, and well, let's start with college. So we'll do that. So among the not college educated, something like 36% voted for Mamdani. But among those with a bachelor's degree or a PhD, 57% voted. What is that about? Why does college educated equal Mamdani?
Well, because they're saddled in debt, like you mentioned, and I think they're kind of disenfranchised in a sense by the system that told them that they have to get a bachelor's degree, which is they're now as ubiquitous as high school degrees at this point. They don't really hold that much industrial value, but that kind of debt is inhibiting a lot of these overpopulated wannabe elites from getting ahead. And so there was this other piece right after the primary in Mamdani won called the Commie Corridor. So it's all those gentrified parts of Brooklyn, of Astoria, of, up the East River. It was those enclaves that really turned out for Mamdani, but it was the working class that he claims to be the biggest fighter for that went for Cuomo. And I believe the results broke down in a similar way with the general election. It's the people who built New York City, not the transplants who came from NESCAC schools and have all these prestigious Ivy League credentials on their resumes. It's not those types that built this city. They didn't want Mamdani because they know that this is first of all, fool's gold pie in the sky promises that are unlikely to be realized, but also that it's going to make life in the city miserable for them. They're not going to benefit from most of his proposals.
No. Let's talk about women, young women, 18 to 29, 81% for Mamdani, by far the biggest age and gender demographic, young women. What's that about?
Honestly, as a young Gen Z woman living in Manhattan, I just do not think many of my peers who are female were thinking that deeply about the mechanics of Mamdani's proposals, especially when it comes to public safety. He's saying we want a Department of Community Safety, and that sounds lovely. It sounds peachy until you look beneath the surface and you find out, well, actually, the only thing that really combats crime in a city like New York City or anywhere is deterrence and law and order and actually arresting criminals and preventing them from getting back out onto the street and reoffending and re-terrorizing young women. So it is in a way like the height of masochism that there are young women who have, like myself, personally experienced very unsafe situations on the streets of New York City, in the subways, in public transit, and still went ahead and voted for Mamdani because it glitters. His platform sounds wonderful, but in practice, it's going to make the city a lot more unsafe. He's going to disarm law enforcement, effectively neuter them. I mean, he's already villainized them throughout his entire campaign, and for most of his political career, he's not going to be any friend to the NYPD. And it's amazing to me that so many young women in the city still voted for him. And I think what that says is that they need to live through, unfortunately, a much more unsafe city to really understand how this translates.
I'm sure you've seen these videos of young women who are walking down the street and they got the selfie camera on, right? And they're taking a video of themselves after they just got punched in the face by some guy walking down the sidewalk. And they're like crying and shocked that they just got punched in the face for no reason. I would love to ask them who they voted for. Is it true that if you live through the horrors of getting punched in the face or living in a violent, dangerous New York City, that you will then wake up and learn your lesson? I hope that's true, but you're a rational, normal person. Not everyone is. It may not even be enough.
Exactly. I shouldn't even say that that's going to be the catalyst for them to have a wake-up call and start voting for conservative governance that actually empowers law enforcement to do their job. Because you mentioned a case that was actually, there was a TikTok influencer who was punched arbitrarily on the street by, of course, a recidivist criminal. And that same influencer, months later, put out a glowing endorsement of Zohran Mamdani on TikTok. So sometimes it just doesn't compute. And I can't understand why, but I think it's just the way it sounds. The way it sounds, community safety. It's very euphemistic, of course, because basically it just means that the mentally ill who are predisposed to violence are going to be handed the keys to the city. They're going to be, it's going to be open season on the subways, whereas before the subways were already very precarious. And now we're just creating more sitting ducks, more moving targets, and more ticking time bombs.
Yeah, everyone needs to remember that Hochul called in the National Guard to keep the subway safe, well before Trump called in the National Guard to keep our law enforcement safe, ICE, et cetera, across the whole country. Let's go to your point about sounding good, fast and free. Fast and free will go down in the history books as great of a slogan as hope and change. Very, very, very effective. Let's go to the third noteworthy demographic, and that are foreigners. So 62% of children in New York City live in a household with a foreign-born person. That's pretty wild. In 1910, 98% of New York City was white. In 1980, it was 50 or 60%, 50%, and now it's 32% are white. Like, this is a totally foreign-born city now, New York City. What does that mean?
Yeah, and I'm not sure of the breakdown of how many of those individuals are citizens now or what their relative status is. But I will say, what the argument has been from the conservative side after this blue sweep is, if you are foreign born in New York City, it is less likely that you are going to have as strong as a stake in the city as, say, I don't know, the descendants of a firefighter who died on 9/11 in one of the crumbling towers. Like, it's just a different type of mindset. And as I said before, there's a group of people, the stakeholders of New York City, that were really invested in it continuing to be the prosperous, safe, free place that it is. And the foreign-born population probably has less of a interest in maintaining the New York, the glory days, like when Rudy Giuliani was in power, and the way that he governed with common sense, competent ideas and policies that made it once again the envy of the world. But now I think what you can see with the foreign-born population is they want to make it more like the rest of the world, which is not not what New York City is supposed to be. It's an international hub, don't get me wrong. The United Nations is based there, and it's always going to be like that. But it's also one of the most quintessential American places in the United States. It is our biggest bragging rights, right? And I do think that part of that is because businesses could set up shop there, because crazy progressives wouldn't run the billionaires and the millionaires out of town with insane tax increases. There's always been kind of a tight-knit, like, the way that all these stakeholders were woven together. Even Democratic governors like Kathy Hochul, she recognizes that this is a very delicate balance. We cannot run all of the rich out to Palm Beach. And Zohran Mamdani, he's throwing that out the window, and he's basically saying, all of the people that keep this city together, go pound sand. We don't care if you leave. And if they leave, the city will not survive.
No, and they'll be happy for that, because that'll keep him and people like him in power for longer. So they're fine with everyone leaving.
Right.
Like, about 30 seconds. What's your advice to Republicans nationwide to make sure that this does not happen across the country?
I would say, honestly, a word of caution, which is, don't take the Mamdani case in New York City maybe as seriously as you might, because New York City is a microcosm. It's not reflective of the rest of the country. I don't think the Mamdani message would work in Nebraska. So honestly, this could be a gift to Republicans. We just have to see how it unfolds. As for the other races around the country, that's a different story, but I do think, consistent messaging, as always, is important for a party.
So just real quick, you're saying that if this becomes the new Democratic Party, then that would be good for Republicans, because maybe it works in New York City, but it won't work many other places.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that
New York
spin. I like
City
that
is,
take.
is a unique case. And honestly, like,
Okay.
since when does the mayor of New York City go on to national politics? It doesn't actually happen that often. I mean, Mayor Adams, I think his career may have plateaued, and Mamdani may have a similar fate. So this might just be a
very good
New
point.
York phenomenon.
Okay, let's hope it stays there. Caroline Downey, columnist, host of Locked In for the National Review. Caroline, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
On the foreign-born portion, though, 18.7% of Texas is foreign-born, and that's not all Mexico. And it's almost 25% of just Houston itself is foreign-born. A lot of these from South Asia, which is where Mamdani got a lot of his support as well. We'll come back with another analysis coming up, and then we'll end with our Politics by Faith segment on how Zohran Mamdani became the mayor of New York City, right here on the First TV.
America is the genesis of what we call settler colonialism. And the American model was exported all around the world. Abraham Lincoln generalized the solution of reservations. They herded American Indians into separate territories. For the Nazis, this was the inspiration. Hitler realized two things. One, that genocide was doable. It is possible to do genocide. That's what Hitler realized. Second thing Hitler realized is that you don't have to have a common citizenship. You can differentiate between people. The Nuremberg laws were patterned after American laws. Anyway, the US put Indians in reservations. The US invented the model.
That is Zohran Mamdani's dad, who we brought here and is now a professor at Columbia University. Sick. I want to go to Robert Spencer. He's the author of Intifada on the Hudson, The Selling of Zohran Mamdani. Robert, how are you, sir?
Very good, thanks. How are you?
Very good. What does Zohran's being a Muslim, what does that have to do with anything? Why does that matter?
Well, it matters because Islam is a political system and one that is supremacist, aggressive, violent, and expansionist, and not just a religion in the Western sense of Judaism or Christianity. And so we have to understand that this is a guy who is, in the first place, he's not just a Muslim, he's a 12er Shiite. That is the official religion, 12er Shiism, of the Islamic Republic of Iran, where the people are ordered every week in the mosques on Friday, the big day for the sermon at the mosque, they have to chant "Death to America." And the supreme leader of Iran, the Ayatollah Khamenei, has said that this is not just a slogan, it's the goal and the mission of our regime. So you've got Mamdani holding to that view and holding in general to Islam, which is a political system that asserts its right as being supposedly divine to replace and supplant every other political system. You've got his father in the clip that you just played. And mind you, he's very close. He's made it very clear that what he holds to, he learned from his parents. He is a good boy, you know, he's reflecting the ideology of his parents. And his father is a Marxist who hates America. He also is a Marxist who hates America. This is not incompatible with his Islam. There are, of course, there's the long-standing leftist Islamic alliance, and it is based on anti-Americanism and the desire to establish an internationalist authoritarian regime in place of America and other countries. So this is what he's bringing to Gracie Mansion.
How do you know that that's his branch of Islam that he follows, you mentioned?
Oh, he's made no secret about that. He said on Twitter several years ago, when it was still Twitter, that he is Ithna Asheri, which is a 12er Shiite. And so he has not concealed that in any way. He also made a point of touring around in mosques, both Sunni and Shiite mosques, during his campaign, where he presented himself as the Muslim candidate, which is not like being the Methodist candidate or the Catholic candidate or something like that, but reflects this political program that is inherent in Islam that both Sunnis and Shia share. And one of his taglines in his stump speech at the mosques was that Muslims don't just belong in New York City, but they belong in City Hall, which to non-Muslims who don't know about Islam, they think, oh, that just means he wants to have Muslims present in government. Because of Islam's political and supremacist nature, it's actually quite an ominous statement for non-Muslims who have a carefully, explicitly delineated second-class status in Islamic society.
What do you think his, Zohran's, motive is? Why is he doing this?
One of the candidates that he worked for, before he became a politician himself, he worked for several socialist candidates to get them elected. And one of them said recently that he's a true believer. He is deeply dedicated to not only his socialism, but his Islam. And so he intends to bring both to New York in a big way.
What are the foreigners, the amount of foreigners that are in New York City right now? 62% of children live in a household with a foreign-born person. And also the South Asia, I read an article recently about the South Asia Get Out the Vote campaign. It's unbelievable what has happened in New York City over these years.
Yeah, and the Muslims vote in a bloc. They see, you look at every other group when they break down elections of various kinds around the country, and they say, well, the Hispanics went 62% for this candidate and 38% for that one, or the women voted 52% for this candidate and 48% for that one, whatever. But when you come to Islam, it's 100-0, because Islam is collectivist. There might be a handful of people who dissent, but ordinarily, we're talking about a group that does what the leader tells them to do. Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, was very clear about this. You obey your leader, even if he's an Ethiopian with a head like a raisin. That statement is often quoted to show, oh, Muhammad was a racist. And that's all true. But more importantly, really, is that Muhammad was an authoritarian. And this is a group that votes as a bloc, which makes it very attractive to politicians of all stripes in the United States. But it also delivered the city for Mamdani, and it will deliver other cities for many other Muslim candidates in the near future.
What is this word, this Islam word, taqariya? It's like deceit. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah. Muhammad, the prophet of Islam, he said, war is deceit. And deceit is, particularly actually in Twelver Shiite Islam, a central part of their understanding of what it means to be practicing their religion. Now, you might think that's an awfully strange thing to build a religion around, but it's because the Sunnis are such an overwhelming majority of Muslims, 85 to 90% worldwide, and they kill Shiites. So Shiites have learned over the years to lie about their religion in order to protect themselves. And this became a cornerstone of Shiite theology, that you deceive your enemies and pretend to be on their side. And so this is also something we should not discount when it comes to Zohran Mamdani. Now, really, he's being quite open about his anti-Americanism and his Marxism. But at the same time, there's no doubt that he is being deceitful about just exactly how bad it's going to be, which we're going to see now in the near future.
Someone called into my radio show the other day and said, oh, who cares? He was in Oklahoma. Said, who cares about New York City? Let New York City fall, and let New York, and let California, and let Illinois, and let Virginia, and he kept naming states. I was like, hey man, first of all, those are all in America. Second of all, you're naming a lot of states that you're willing just to give up on and write off. This is becoming quite a big problem. And if you want to talk about Islam, I'm concerned about Michigan, of course, but also Texas. What is happening in these states, and what do you see the state of the rise of Islam across the country? Muslims are still only 1% of the country, but so is this something to be concerned about or no?
Yeah, It's Muslims are just 1% of the country, but because it's a political system as well as a religion, they seek political power out of proportion to their numbers. And there is a
Yes.
concerted effort on the part of an organization called Engage, which is connected to the Muslim Brotherhood, to elect Muslims at every level of American politics. And this is, as you noted, particularly going on in Michigan and Texas right now. Of course, in Texas, we also have the Epic City Sharia-based community, and there are going to be many more Sharia enclaves in the United States also in the near future. But the whole idea is to have Muslims all over the political system, and then counter-terror efforts are stymied. And that is exactly what Mamdani is looking at. Linda Sarsour, the famous leftist hijab-wearing Muslim activist, she has said just in the last few days that he promised to dismantle the Strategic Response Group, which is the NYPD's counterterror apparatus. So New York City is not going to be policing terrorism, which gives, of course, a free hand to the terrorists who struck on 9/11 and will almost certainly strike again.
Amazing. All right, so what are we to do without being called Islamophobic or racist or whatever? What are we to do to prevent this threat?
Well, I'm afraid we're going to be called that if we mount the slightest bit of resistance. And we just have to take it and plow on and understand that we need to engage and deal with trying to defeat these Muslim candidates. Because, like I said before, this is not just whether you elect a Baptist or a Methodist. This is a much different thing. And we need to be talking about that, raising public awareness about that, and fighting it at the ballot box wherever there are Muslim candidates running, because this is an effort that will ultimately destroy America as a free republic.
The Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, a Muslim hijab-wearing woman as well, and no one cared or paid much attention to that. Robert Spencer is the author of the book Intifada on the Hudson, the Selling of Zohran Mamdani. Robert, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Appreciate you. Come back and we'll finish up with our Politics by Faith segment right here on the First TV. Spread the word. Welcome back to our special, Who is Zohran Mamdani? Just want to play this clip here of AOC at the Zohran rally about a week or so before the election. This was her opening line.
Slice of New York City alone, we represent over 100 languages and cultures.
Yay! We can't talk to each other. Hooray! The crowd went wild. We literally can't communicate. Yay, Tower of Babel! People came together to build a tower to make a name for ourselves. God's punishment, his punishment, was they can't communicate with each other anymore. God's punishment was diversity of language. The people did not obey God's command to spread out all over the earth. This was their punishment to force them to do it. How much of Zohran winning this election is a punishment from God? Because God has a history of giving people what they want. One of my favorite Bible stories is when the Israelites wanted a king. They wanted a king just like all the other nations. That's what they said, like all the other nations. And Samuel comes and says, that's not a good idea, guys. It's in 1 Samuel 8:10. It's worth reading the whole thing. But he goes through all the reasons why you shouldn't want a king. He says, the king will conscript your sons for the military. The king's going to force you to work in the fields for him. He's going to force your daughters to work. He's going to steal land from you. He's going to give your land to his servants. The king's going to tax you more than ever, all to help benefit his people. All these reasons not to have a king. And then in verse 18 it says, and in that day you will cry out because of your king, whom you have chosen for yourselves. But the Lord will not answer you in that day. Do you see a comparison to today? Right? A communist mayor will steal your money, if you have any. He'll take your money to enrich his cronies. He'll turn the recipients of welfare into his slaves, which is what happened when you live on welfare, generationally, of course. You're beholden to whatever scraps the government will give you. This is a warning. There was a punishment that God gave the people, a king. And here we are in America coming right after a No Kings rally across the country, and those same people voted for a communist. Quick sidebar, the New York Times went to a rally for Zohran, and they took a picture of this fella. Tulashi Shitraka, whatever. This is his first time voter. And he went to this Mamdani rally. He's from Nepal. He's from Nepal, and he said, New York City should not be a city of millionaires and billionaires. It should be for all. Okay, that's what this guy from Nepal said. He's going to vote. First time voter, great. The New York Times, 2 days before they posted that picture, 2 days, wrote a story in a different section of the newspaper about a revolution that is currently taking place in, of all places, Nepal, where that guy's from. And the New York Times said that young Nepalis are chafed at the government's abrupt ban of social media because what the young people wanted was an end to the corruption in a country where the families of communists parade their wealth around to the rest of the population that has seemed to slide into hopelessness. So I just want to be very clear with this. We have Nepal, a communist country, where the extremely wealthy families that are connected to the Communist Party have tons of money and are flaunting it to everyone else who is poor and hopeless. So they have overthrown the communist government in Nepal. That guy flees Nepal to our country, hates the millionaires and billionaires, and votes to turn New York City communist, just like the country he left. Not to mention Mamdani himself is a multimillionaire. His mom's this massive Bollywood director, has a $50 million net worth. Okay, are you with me? How insane this is? One more line from AOC's speech.
We welcome people of all religions, faiths, and creeds.
Yay, woohoo, we have no unifying principles. Hooray, there's nothing that unites us other than hating this country. You gotta always put a red flag on the field when you hear someone use a word that we don't use in real life. And creeds is one of those words. It's a very interesting word that I've never used ever in real life. I've never used it in like a sentence, but politicians throw it around all the time, a creed. What is a creed? So I looked it up. I looked up the Webster's Dictionary, original dictionary, Webster's Dictionary 1828.com. And there's two definitions for the word creed. The first most important definition, a brief summary of the articles of Christian faith. The second is that which is believed, any system of principles which are believed or professed. But I love how the definition of creed, the first definition, is a summary of the Christian faith. So you didn't have to say Christian creed. There was just creed. It was just the creed. Here's my creed. And it was a Christian creed. And yeah, there were different creeds, but they were all Christian creeds. So you have like the Apostles' Creed from the year like 200. I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. And there were other Christian creeds, but they all worked together. It was all the same Christianity, just slightly different, wording of the same ideas, but it was all Christian. So you wouldn't say Christian creed, that's redundant. That's the original definition of this word, creed. But when AOC uses the word creeds, she's talking about countless different principles that are believed and professed that have nothing to do with Christianity. And we're supposed to celebrate the fact that we all believe different things. That is not good to celebrate. We need one creed. We need a creed. That's like the creed. We need a Christian creed. That's the creed in this country. That's how this country used to be. And just like the Israelites begged for an earthly king, I should say, unlike how they begged for it, we need to follow the King of Kings. That's how to save souls. That's how to save this country. When you embrace thousands of creeds and an infinite number of genders and 100 different languages, this can only on purpose. This can only on purpose cause division and chaos, and that's where the devil gets a foothold. We did another episode on my podcast, Politics by Faith, about Zohran and how when Christianity decreases, communism by necessity, it must also increase. There's a direct inverse correlation. As Christianity goes down, the belief in communism goes up. And that is because Karl, so people always get focused on Marxism. You got to know about Karl. That's why I call it Karlism. when you know about Karl and how much Karl hated Christians and hated Christianity, then Marxism makes perfect sense. It is at its people think Marxism is anti-capitalist. It is, but that's the second order. The first order, the first purpose of Karl is to take down Christianity. I explain more of that on my podcast, Politics by Faith. It's where we take the news of the day, we run it through the Bible, run it through a biblical lens, and try to make sense of this crazy world around us. Listen, Zohran won, a lot of losses out of the most recent election. We got a year now. We got a year, less than a year now for the midterm elections. Onward and upward. Let's focus, refocus on what matters, and save this country coming up in our next election. But every day until then, too. Podcast, Politics by Faith, First TV. Mike Slater. Spread the word.